So, guys, it's that time of the week again. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Kickabout. And this week, I am joined for a Manchester United season review by two fellow Reds, Shane Pollard and David Dent. So, welcome back to the pod, lads. It's your first time, obviously, together on a pod, and we'll be obviously chatting all things Manchester United. Just before we ask, I'm going to ask Bodie to maybe rate Manchester United seasons out of 10. But we're obviously looking back on a second place finish, I think 14 points behind Man City. Losing in the Europa League final last week is obviously a hard one to take, no matter what competition it is. Quarterfinal of an FA Cup, semi-final of the Carling Cup as well. Shane, I might go to you first. If you're to rate United's season out of 10, what would you rate it as and why?
I reckon if you had have given me this outcome at the start of the season, I would have given it probably as high as a 9. But the way it feels now, kind of the way the season petered out, and I suppose that the performance, not even the result in the Europa League final, the performance, I give it a 7.5 is how I feel after the season. But yeah, feel a bit probably more negative than I should after just the last few weeks.
Dave?
Yeah, I can't really argue with that. I think any of us at the start of the season would have snapped their hands up, would have snapped somebody's hand off for a second place finish and a Europa League final. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. Like we're a week on from the Europa League final, and I'm sure you guys feel the same. It still stings. Like it really does. It was just the way it unfolded, and of course all you're hearing is the media commentary on it as well, which I don't think is fair. I don't think it's been exactly balanced, but I was actually thinking 7, but 7.5 is probably fair.
Yeah, actually, my kind of thinking myself, I was I would have said 7 if we had won the Europa League, and then I was thinking 6.5, but that's probably comes across quite negative. But I also think that there has been progress made under Solskjaer. When you look at the start of our season, that we obviously lost to Palace in the opening, or the second weekend of the season. We lost to Spurs as well. I think that the Arsenal game was quite early as well. And then after that, we just seemed to pick up our form. We were getting wins maybe in some games that we didn't probably deserve to get the 3 points, but we were grinding out some results with some great performances along the way. But do you guys look back, like, I think we'd all admit Man United, none of us thought Man United were going to win the league this season. But do you think there was an opportunity missed, Shane, we'll say, around that Liverpool game, Sheffield United game, and Everton game, potentially, to maybe not necessarily win a league, but to close that gap to Manchester City?
Yeah, I think it's been the whole problem with the whole Solskjaer era is we go on these, like, it's like a roller coaster. We go on these runs of great performances, beating teams away from home like Man City or Chelsea, and then we go and play Sheffield United, West Brom, teams like that where you just keep getting let down. And I never ever once thought we were going to win the league or even had a chance of winning the league, to be honest. But I would have just liked to have seen in those moments, and again, it came at the end of the season as well, those moments when the pressure was on and there was almost an opportunity to, like, really, I don't know, make a name for yourself and stand up and fight for a bit of a battle and a bit of competition, and just kind of went down with a whimper. There was no, the one game all season I actually was really, like, proud afterwards was the game against Spurs away from home. And the main reason was we did play really well, but there was just a fight and a determination, and like, I know that doesn't win you league titles, but I just felt like that was something that was just missing. And there's a bit of regret with the season in that sense, but no, I don't think we were ever challenging, or I don't think I think we would have struggled to even put City under pressure. Like, they took their foot off the gas. But yeah, I would have liked to have just seen just a little bit more pressure applied by Man United in those moments.
Yeah, Dave, I know we've discussed this in kind of other groups as well, but we would have liked to see United maybe finish single digits behind Man City, and that obviously kind of got away. But looking back potentially at that Liverpool game, did you see, and we'll use that term again, a missed opportunity in that Liverpool game where kind of Shane mentioned that there was kind of no belief, no fight, as in that United believed they could go out or go to Anfield, get a win, and those players maybe even thought that, yeah, maybe we can win the league. Did you feel that opportunity was missed? And obviously we missed a couple of big chances that afternoon as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think for our season, really did pivot on the Liverpool game. And we spoke on the podcast about whether the protest at Old Trafford potentially down the line could be a catalyst. And obviously that's going to remain to be seen. But I think the more I think about it, the short-term catalyst it created, I do think is it put a negative. It sparked the downward spiral of our season, and coming back to the game, obviously that caused a fixture pile up. And by the time we got to Liverpool, we'd just lost to Leicester, who we have struggled to deal with quite a bit this season and last season. But we came into that game then on the back of a defeat, on the back of a controversy about only picking a second string side, and I use air quotes on that because that whole debate was complete and utter horseshit. But using that game, like all of it, it can't have not affected the players in some way, you know, being bombarded in their hotel for 8 or 9 hours and then not sure if something's going to happen before the rescheduled game, and then you actually have to go out and play the game. And at that point, Liverpool's form had completely turned. You know, okay, they weren't free scoring and they weren't destroying teams like they were, but at the time we got to that game, they hadn't actually lost since March the 4th or something like that. So a lot of these things kind of culminated again in another performance against Liverpool once that game finally got played, where I don't want to say they bottled it, but when they had chances, and the same happened in the opposite fixture earlier on in the season, where Pogba had a golden chance to take 3 points at Anfield, which we haven't done for a long time. And like times when they needed to step up, or when they needed to be clinical, and when they needed to take their opportunities, they didn't. And it just feels like it all started to unravel with that. Not necessarily with the Leicester game. Maybe it was actually the Leicester game, because obviously we lost that one. But no, we didn't. We drew. Sorry, did we draw?
Okay, no, we lost.
Yeah, we lost. Yeah. Like we needed to win every game that week, and we did all right with beating Villa, not convincingly, but we beat Villa, and then it all like it was like a domino effect where once we lost to Leicester, then we lost to Liverpool, and then by the time we get to the Europa League final, okay, there's a bit of a break and they got to rest and everything else, but they didn't seem at it. And yeah, I'm not sure if that really answers your question, but I think it kind of does.
Yeah, and obviously you touched on the protest, and we won't go too much into detail because obviously we did a podcast a few weeks ago on that. But
sure.
Shane, did you think the effects of that had a huge impact? Obviously, going, we'll say, even into the Europa League final, because we could say, as Dave said, we did kind of lose a bit of momentum from the Leicester game, Liverpool game, and then into the Fulham game. And then obviously we completely rotated our team for the final game against Wolves. I think that had that much of an effect on the Europa League final.
Yeah, but I think you can't just turn form off and on. That's the problem. It's all well and good, and I actually think the problem was, obviously the fixture pileup was created because of it, but I think the bigger problem, and if you look at the bigger picture, is Solskjaer didn't rotate the team enough throughout the season. He didn't have the faith in, say, past the first 12, 13 players to rotate that squad, to give players game time, to allow players to get more minutes or form throughout the season. And I think then when you got to certain stages of the season where, we did have multiple fixtures, or we had a game like the Europa League final where it was crying out for subs to be made, but like subs to come on and make a difference. So not just fresh legs, but like players who actually had a bit of belief in themselves that they can make a difference to the game. And I think you just can't turn form off and on. And once we kind of secure Champions League football and that second place, naturally you take your foot off the gas. Like, people can say, watching at home in their sitting room, oh, I can't believe they're not playing at 100% every single week, or blah, blah, blah. The players achieved what they needed to achieve at that part of the season, took their foot off the gas. They didn't necessarily have the squad to then come in and, make up for the fact that some of them did lose form. Like Bruno Fernandes lost form probably for the last 6, 7, 8 games of the season, I would say. Could he have done with more of a rest and given someone else a few games, and then he comes back into the team? It's all well and good with hindsight, but yeah, I just think we didn't have the momentum, we didn't have the form, and then we just didn't have the players coming off the bench to actually change it when it wasn't working.
But Shane, just what I'm saying about that domino effect, you're right, you can't turn form off and on, but when you lose the game to Leicester, and then you lose to Liverpool, and then you draw with Fulham, and then you're not picking up, and even the Fulham game is now somewhat tainted with Cavani's goal was offside because Bruno didn't touch it and all of that. Like that feels like a steady, over like 2 weeks, that's a steady sort of decline to get into that final where you've then lost momentum. We had a shocking performance against Roma in the second leg. In between all of that, thank God, like Cavani got us to that final, obviously, but we had a shocking semi-final second leg, which should have been done and dusted. And then by the time you get to that final, there's surely that form after those 5 or 6 games, then it's not about turning it off and on. You just don't have it.
Yeah, I think it's because they had nothing to play for. That's I think they took their foot off the gas, and like all they had to play for was pride in those few games. They had Champions League football secured. They then got second place secured. Half of them were probably absolutely shattered again from playing so many minutes. They were looking at a Europa League final. They were looking at a Euros, wherever else. And like it is a domino effect in terms of, but I just think the season just the way the season ended just didn't help the management or the squad in preparing for that big game at the end of the season, in multiple different factors. Why?
Sure.
You know.
Well, that's what I'm saying about if the protest doesn't happen, not to blame it all on the protest, but from that point on, we would have only had one game a week, bar the second leg of the Europa League, which technically was a dead rubber. So one game a week would have been far more manageable, and maybe Ollie would have felt more comfortable with rotating if he knew players were going to get rest. I just in the short term, we may look back in this in a year's time and think, fucking, maybe it was a great thing to maybe it breaks a bigger cross. But in the short term, I think the players, the management, the coach, I think they all suffered because of it.
Yeah, that was the point I was actually gonna touch on. Yeah, short term, it didn't benefit the team on the pitch and in terms of performance with the fixture pileup, but maybe long term, or even though over the summer, we could see potential benefits of those protests in terms of the Glazers being more on board, listening to fans, backing Ole even more so. I know he has been backed in terms of money and stuff like that, but just the whole recruitment side of things. And just before we actually go into the recruitment side, we've all touched on our squad, and in terms of our squad isn't a quality squad. We've a good starting 11, but when it comes to the ability to rotate, but we'll touch on that in a bit. But so obviously it looks like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to be rewarded. I don't know if that's the best word to use or not, but with a 3-year deal. Dave, do you think Ole deserves it? Do you think he hasn't been given enough credit for the things that he has done? I know everyone has their flaws, everyone makes mistakes, but I personally don't think Solskjaer has been given enough credit. But I also think there's a bit more to come from him in terms of what he can achieve maybe with this team.
Agree 100%. He certainly does not get the credit that he deserves. I think he's a better manager today than he was when he took over 2.5 years ago. Anything good that he does very swiftly gets moved on and talked about the next negative thing about him. You're right, the word rewarding, it probably doesn't feel great right now, but at the end of the day, you don't sack a manager who has progressively moved you on each season that he's been there, finishes second, and then and gets to a European Cup final. That you don't sack a manager for that. And listen, we've seen the best of Paul Pogba in 4 years, arguably. We have seen the best of Luke Shaw, 100%. We have seen him bring in more youth players than any manager since Ferguson, and arguably maybe more youth players than Ferguson did in his last couple of years. He's been very, very positive. He's been very, very encouraging. Yes, he's made mistakes. Yes, his in-game management can be very hit and miss in terms of picking out what he needs and what like we watched Unai Emery show him how it's done in the final, and I agree with Shane when it comes to his trust in other players and bringing them in and being able to rotate them. I think he does need to improve on that, but there are plenty of things that he can improve on. But for the praise that so many other managers get, he doesn't get it for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he's manager of Manchester United and you're just supposed to, like, all of these things are just assumed of you. But I don't remember him being up for manager of the month much. He might have been a couple of times, but I don't remember him getting it at any stage, which which seems a little bit crazy. But listen, he's a young manager. I know he's a 47, 48. He's a young manager, and he is learning on the job, I guess, to a degree. But I love how he conducts himself. I love his respect for the club. I love how much how he presents himself. He keeps everything in house. He doesn't lay into his players even when they haven't performed well, and he's defended everybody to the camera. I think there's loads of misconceptions about him being weak or being, or not being strong enough to lead the club, which I don't personally agree with. But yeah, I think he's worth his new contract. He may not be the person who brings us back to winning titles regularly, but he is certain. I feel he's certainly worth keeping his job right now.
Yeah, I think I said that to Bodie as well, that when Solskjaer was appointed in the temporary role and then obviously permanency, I never felt that he would be the manager to bring us back to a league title, but I did feel that he would progress us on and maybe get us moving back in the right direction, kind of build those foundations again that were in place. Obviously under Ferguson. But Shane, obviously Solskjaer made it into the Manager of the Season award. What positives or what improvements have you seen in Solskjaer? But also, again, if you want to touch on what do you think he needs to improve on, maybe apart from, or if you want to be more specific about his in-game kind of decisions or his in-game management?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I don't want to come across as negative about him, because I think he's been the right man for now. He took over a squad that was really low, morale was really low. It was a bit of a weird squad, quite top heavy in a lot of positions, lacking a lot of depth in others, and had to really, change a mindset, change a culture almost. And I think he's done a really good job at that. I think Dave actually hit the nail on the head, but possibly, in my opinion, in the wrong way. The manager of Manchester United should not be learning on the job. That's like saying a small business owner should be the CEO of this big, massive company, and he or she will make mistakes and figure it out as they go along. The manager of a big club like Manchester United should be a top quality manager who's proven track record, who is not learning on the job. And that, for me, as much as I love Solskjaer, he's a legend, and I think he's done lots of good things, like I said, and I think he's actually put together a squad now which is ready to, if managed in the right way and, handled in the right way, maybe in the transfer window. I know we spent a lot of money already in recent years, but we need a few more players. I think they are definitely heading in the right direction, but I think, I just don't like the idea of the manager of as big a club as Man United learning on the job. And then the other one is the in-game management, and we've spoken about that so many times together. Is he pretty much makes a sub between the 60th and 64th minute nearly every game. It's pre-planned. I don't quite often see him, and I'm not like I'm the expert or anything, but I don't very often see him make a change mid-game tactically, whether it be our formation, whether it be some sort of game plan that stands out and you go, oh, I see how he counteracted something else. But he has done lots of positives, and he's brought us to a place where I unfortunately think he's probably hit his ceiling with us, and I wouldn't be shocked if something happens in the next 12 months and somebody with more experience does end up coming in, unfortunately, but I'd love to be wrong. I would absolutely love to be wrong. But
I guess the thing is, and I do take your point, and it's a very, very fair point. I think a lot of people will look at it and say, well, listen, Manchester United didn't go straight out the gate and go for Solskjaer. They went for experienced managers with a track record, and we went for two of them, and two big big managers in terms of experience and in terms of trophies, and they didn't get it. They didn't get United. They didn't get the club. They didn't get.
They were terrible appointments. I know it's easy to say now, but they were absolutely terrible appointments. They were people who were past their prime. They were like I know we talked about earlier. I feel the same about Ancelotti with Everton and now going to Real Madrid. It's like I think they're these weird appointments of, they're not really
probably desperation. If we're being fair, like Mourinho definitely was.
Mourinho was a celebrity manager. I feel like that was the reason he was chosen. He was the biggest name manager, just like literally the biggest name.
Out of curiosity, if you can think back before Mourinho was appointed manager, or it was official or whatever, were you guys happy with? And I obviously don't want to be dwelling too much on the past, but were you happy with Mourinho potentially becoming Man United manager at the time? Because I know Pep Guardiola was obviously available as well. And maybe one or two others.
Just because Van Gaal was leaving, to be honest.
Okay.
That's how I felt at the time, from what I remember.
I can kind of agree with that point as well, Shane, that obviously Van Gaal's football was quite boring. I know he won a cup, and I did feel he was treated unfairly the way that they dismissed them, whatever, the day after an FA Cup final. That's not traditionally how Man United do it, but maybe in recent times that is kind of how they're going about things and behind the scenes. But for me, I remember at the time being like, Mourinho or Pep, I'd take either of them at the time. And obviously hindsight is a wonderful.
Not for this podcast, but you need to look at the players he bought and sold. Van Gaal, like, look what he did to the Man United squad. He literally put it back 5-6 years. I think he did that much damage to who he sold and who he bought. He absolutely ruined them, I think.
So then you have to look at obviously Solskjaer and give him credit because I think as football fans, we think a manager can go into a club, whether it's Solskjaer or anyone, and just wipe out all the deadwood. That never happens. I don't think that's ever happened. That, like, even look at Alex Ferguson.
Like Arsenal now, even I'd say Arsenal are a good example of that.
Yeah,
Arsenal need to get rid of a lot of players, but who's going to?
Yeah, and obviously the wages on top. But you look at obviously Ferguson getting rid of Kanchelskis, Ince, Hughes, but that was only 3 players. Whereas Solskjaer was, and he's still left with the likes of Phil Jones, and he's still trying to move him on. But he got rid of a lot of deadwood and started to build a team that could actually perform well on the pitch. And it looked like there's a lot more chemistry going compared to a team under Van Gaal, even a team under Mourinho. So I do think in those, when you look at that side of things for Solskjaer, he has done very, very well in getting rid of those lads, and it does take time, and people just presume that can just be done in one transfer window. It never does. Dave, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, just on the Mourinho thing, I wanted Mourinho, the Mourinho that left Inter Milan, the one before Madrid. That was the Mourinho I wanted. We've discussed this at length on in various platforms, but Real Madrid ruined Mourinho as we knew, and I wasn't against bringing him in, and I don't think it was a case of is it Mourinho or Pep? Mourinho or Pep? I don't think Pep was ever really an option for us. I don't think he was pursued enough, or I don't think we were really an option. I would have loved him, but I don't think it was really a one or the other. But I wasn't against Mourinho coming in. I have been bored to my fucking tears with Van Gaal, and I was fine for Mourinho to come in. I thought he would, if nothing else, get us winning. And then he brought in Pogba, and he brought in Lukaku, and he brought in some great signings. So I was optimistic. But listen, Solskjaer has gotten rid of, I think, 11 players. I mean, the amount of players that he has managed to move on, whether it be on loan or whether it just be off the books altogether, is actually a lot in 2.5 years. It's kind of impressive. That is one of the things that I do think he needs he needs to be credited for, because there was a lot of it, and starting off with Fellaini and then getting rid of anybody that wasn't going to work their ass off, But
I think what you said with the young players as well is a really good point. Like the amount of academy players that he's integrated, whether it be not even the ones that have come on and played multiple games, but the ones who have been involved with the first team, with training, been in and around the squad for Europa League matches, for example. I think Manchester United have put a lot of emphasis into, say, players aged 15 to 18 in the last number of years, because it had kind of fallen away. And I think, again, like David said a few minutes ago, he's been exceptional at actually making them feel part of the first team, and like not only just from being successful, but as a fan and enjoying it and watching it. You want to see that. Like it's part of the appeal of being a Man United fan. And other clubs look at us externally and kind of laugh about, oh, like who cares? Just go and buy someone for 40, 50 million and they're a better player. But it does mean something when you're watching these players and you feel like they give a shit because they've come up through that system.
Yeah,
100%. I mean, we've got six or seven more academy players in our squad than City. I mean, let's face it, City have Foden, and that's it. And in the last, like, just this season, I mean, Greenwood, Williams, Scott McTominay. I hadn't realised that he outscored Pogba this season, and until I kind of saw his numbers in the Europa League final. He was superb. He was absolutely fantastic in the Europa League final, as good as any United player on the pitch. And then to bring in the likes of Elanga, who scored a cracking finish in the game against Wolves, and Hannibal got into the squad, and Axel, I think, played in that game as well. He's brought him in out of the cold, So I mean, it's a fantastic thing.
Just speaking about youth and obviously promoting youth, Solskjaer obviously gave Dean Henderson a big opportunity. Shane, do you think he nailed down a number one spot? And can you see David De Gea in a United shirt come the start of next season, or can you see him heading back to Spain, obviously, to be with his family?
Yeah, well, I think if Henderson had nailed the number one spot, he would have played in that final. And again, easy to say in hindsight, but I think Solskjaer, the goalkeeping situation was already a bit of a mess. And I think the way Solskjaer has actually handled it has made it much more of a mess than it even was, because you've now got De Gea, who was dropped. Let's say he was dropped. He was given extra time off to go and see, go back to Spain, but he was dropped. So it was obviously, then he gave Henderson a vote of confidence and then he dropped him. So both goalkeepers, I would imagine anyways, feel like they're not trusted 100% by the manager. And I think goalkeeper of all positions is the one. I wouldn't be shocked if we actually went and bought a goalkeeper now this summer, which I never thought I'd say a few months ago, but it wouldn't surprise me massively. And it wouldn't surprise me if either or both of those goalkeepers weren't there next year, because De Gea is on massive wages. So if he's not playing, he can't be there. Like, he has to be first choice or not there. And Henderson, going by everyone that's kind of close to the club, journalists, etc., the way they talk about him is he's not a guy who's going to settle for second place. So it's a really tough one. I don't know how they're going to manage the situation. I genuinely think it's in a much more difficult situation than it even was. I thought it'd been handled perfectly until Henderson got dropped after the Liverpool game. And now I don't really know what's going to happen.
Dave, kind of same question to you, but before I let you go on with that, Tom Heaton become number one at Man United?
Absolutely not. No, that's. I don't want to call it a silly signing, but it kind of is. Okay, so the short answer is that I respectfully disagree with Shane. I think when when Dean was brought in, when De Gea went back to Spain, there was no real chance that De Gea was going to go back and then come back to United and then sit on the bench for the rest of the season because Dean had cemented his place. Because then it gives the impression that that Solskjaer took the opportunity for him to go and see his baby to drop him, and now he's sitting on the bench every single week, getting close to 400 grand a week and not playing. So I think he was always going to show some degree of respect and sentiment and share out the games, especially with a fixture build up. And it looked like Dean was getting pretty much the Premier League games, and that De Gea was getting the Europa League games, and then listen, I don't think Dean did himself. I don't think he did himself any harm, and he's a number one for me. I would be happy to start the season with him. I think he's. He had a little slip here and there, but nothing really major. I think he contributes far more than he lacks. I think the back four is far more organized, is far more alert. He talks an awful lot more. He comes for the ball an awful lot more, and I think generally he's far more in control than De Gea is. I would be happy for De Gea to respectfully get his move back to Spain, spend time with his family, move on Lee Grant if you like, move on Nathan Bishop or send him out on loan. I don't know about Joel Pereira. Is he in? He could be on loan. I'm really not sure. Really, if we, and Romero, he needs to be gone as well. That one's a bit of a mess. That's gone very quiet. But listen, if we started the new season with Dean Henderson and Tom Heaton as your two goalkeepers, I'd be happy enough with that. That's fine. Like we really don't need a gang load of goalkeepers.
I think as well.
You think Solskjaer played De Gea in the Europa League final, which was probably the biggest managerial game of Solskjaer's career, out of respect, or I don't see how he picks him unless he thinks he's his number one in that situation. Like, it can't be coincidence that De Gea or Henderson got dropped. In my opinion, got dropped after the one bad game he had, which was Liverpool. Because then De Gea,
and I don't think he even had a bad game against Liverpool. I think he could have done better with the third goal, but I would start Henderson. I think what Henderson has brought to the team has been nothing but positive in terms of, like you said, coming out for crosses, sweeping, a general just confidence he's given the back line. But I think Solskjaer completely showed his hand by not playing him in the Europa League final, because I think that was Solskjaer's biggest game as Manchester United manager, because so much was riding on it with the way the season ended. Everyone was talking about the fact he needed to win a trophy, and I think he kind of reverted to type and brought De Gea back in, because it was kind of.
But do you think as well that was to do obviously with loyalty, and something similar that Mourinho did in the run to the Europa League? I know.
Well, Henderson played nearly all the Europa League games.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Henderson did play in the group stage, and then it was De Gea's kind of gig after that. But just on the goalkeeping situation, just obviously we can't forget what David De Gea has done for Man United over the years. I think it was 4 in a row player of the season, saved us on numerous occasions, but there has obviously been a bit of a decline in the last couple of seasons. But again, looking back at De Gea, he in his first 2 seasons made a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors, and I just look at Dean Henderson. Yeah, he's made some howlers. We look at maybe the Sheffield United game, for example, potentially that Liverpool, AC Milan as well. But it's a much bigger step up, obviously, to playing with Sheffield United week in, week out. obviously it is a big step up. He is going to make mistakes, just like any goalkeeper, like David De Gea did at the start. But I would kind of tend to agree with Dave there that I would be happy for him to be number one next season, and I would be also happy for United not to go out and buy another goalkeeper, obviously because we need to prioritize elsewhere. But even if the funds were available, another goalkeeper was available, I'd be happy to stick with Dean Henderson.
I would too. I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked now, because I kind of get the feeling that Solskjaer doesn't necessarily trust him. I hope I'm wrong.
Shane, can I say, what is there something to be said for the Europa League final potentially being De Gea's farewell?
Well, then that says everything you need to know about Solskjaer as a manager, in my opinion. Because
okay, but I guess going into this game, obviously we're favourites. Obviously, De Gea's played in the previous round against Roma in the second round, had a very good game in the second round, and made something like 14 saves in that game. I don't think it says everything you need to know about Solskjaer. It's the last game of the season and potentially De Gea's last game for United. So I just don't. I guess I'm not seeing it as huge a statement that he doesn't play Henderson in that game, where he doesn't probably expect us to be under pressure an awful lot. And De Gea didn't have to do much. Like, he really didn't. United controlled that game fairly well, and it's like De Gea is under the spotlight now because he missed the penalty, obviously, and
obviously again, I kind of don't want to be negative here and criticizing David De Gea, but I thought he could have done a bit more with the Villarreal goal. I know there was a lot of things obviously in the build up as well, and then potentially you can look at the penalty shootout situation where obviously David De Gea hadn't saved a penalty in his last however number of penalties that he faced. Like I said, obviously I'm all for Dean Henderson. David De Gea has done great things at United, but I do kind of tend to agree with Shane on this one. I think if it's a final, you play your best team, no matter what sentimental reasonings there are, whether it's somebody's last game or loyalty or respect and stuff like that. I just think you're in it to win it, ideal at the end of the day, and you play your best game in.
Can I ask you a quick question, right? Just to sorry to cut over you. If Juventus get to Europa League final or get to a Champions League final, and Buffon is about to retire, or he's going to leave the club, do they send out Buffon playing against, let's say, Sociedad or Sevilla, let's say? Do they play Buffon, or do they say, no, Chesney is normally our number one keeper? You wouldn't think it's outrageous for whatever manager. Do Juventus have a manager at the minute? Whatever manager to play Buffon in a final, if it's potentially their last game for the club. It's not. I don't think it's crazy.
But there's only a negative outcome by doing that, because if they
and we're saying all of this retrospectively, because if United had won it, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
If Solskjaer picked De Gea because he felt that he was the best goalkeeper for that match to win that game, I have zero issues. If he's picking him, like you speculated, there's a small chance because it was a bit of a romantic gesture basically to do it, then I think that's insane.
And his performance in the semi-final.
Performance in the semi-final, but I would argue the fact he made so many saves is because he let so many chances happen in the 6-yard box, basically, by the way he goalkeeps. That's not even a word. By the way he plays in goals. The way he plays in goals allows so many crosses and headers to happen in our penalty area that he inevitably makes more saves by staying on his line. Like, I genuinely think if Henderson played that game, half of those crosses would have been collected, or the defense wouldn't have been as deep. So those chances don't happen.
Now, I should say I feel, Ollie dropped the ball.
We're all just annoyed that we lost the Europa League.
we are annoyed that we lost the Europa League, but I actually do feel like Dean should have started, and and I feel like he gets to one of those 11 penalties. I felt that was a big call.
I think 4 of his last 7 he's faced in professional football.
I mean, like,
anyways, lads, we might just wrap up. We might just wrap up the goalkeeping situation just so we can give a little bit more time. But
sorry, Gary.
I know it's we could have a podcast on its own debating who could be number one at United, but I think we're all in agreement to say that if it was David De Gea's last game, obviously it was a horrible way for him to finish, but he's done a lot of good in a Man United shirt, more good than bad, obviously.
Absolutely, he's been exceptional. He's been incredible.
Just before we go on to signings, I was just going to quickly ask you both who you think has been the most improved player, the biggest surprise this season for United. I think best player potentially is Fernandes or Shaw, so we might skip that one. But and also who's been the most disappointing. So Dave, quickly with you, most improved, biggest surprise, and most disappointing.
Most improved has to be Luke Shaw. You and I have said it a number of times. We were ready for him to pack up and go on his merry little way. We thought we'd seen enough of him. So yeah, Luke Shaw for sure. Biggest surprise, I guess I'll go with Cavani because I probably bought into the hype a little bit of his age. And I never really watched him play week in, week out. I never watched him. Like I saw him in the Champions League for PSG, but and at a World Cup. But that's not watching a player. I didn't realize his touch was so good. I didn't realize his movement was so good. He was just a smashing signing. As a disappointment,
I'm going to give you a hint.
Yeah,
you'd have to say, John. I don't know if you're pointing at Martial or Rashford, but I'm actually going to say Rashford. I know his numbers flattered to deceive, and he has these wonderful moments every now and again. But I don't think he's had a good season. I think he's had good moments, and but that's about it. I would really like him to recover properly. I'd really like him to be fit come new season because we were really not seeing the best of him whatsoever. So yeah, I think those 3.
Shane, same to you. Most improved, biggest surprise, and most disappointing.
Yeah, for me, most improved and biggest surprise was both Luke Shaw. I thought when Tellez came in, he was going to be the number one. He was going to be this attacking fullback that, the modern game kind of craves. But obviously, Shaw's just been unbelievable pretty much since then. Cavani definitely gets a nod as well. I thought he was perhaps another kind of Alexis Sanchez type signing that was going to, we're just going to see him at a part of his career where we wish we had him 5 years earlier. But he's been brilliant, and it kind of showed what kind of leads into Martial being my biggest disappointment, because he showed what having a proper striker and centre forward and the difference that makes to the team. Martial has just been so disappointing. I thought at the end of last season with himself, Greenwood and Rashford, we'd kind of found this combination of players that were, none of them was going to get maybe 30, 35 goals a season, but they were all going to get 20, 25 because of the way they were going to play together. And apart from the Man City game away this season, Martial has been absolutely dreadful. He showed how good he can be in that game. He played up front by himself as a lone striker. He bullied Stones and Diaz, held the ball up brilliantly, linked play. City couldn't handle him that day, but then he goes and plays other teams and just might as well not be on the pitch. So yeah, that would be, to be honest, pretty easy, straightforward answers for me with those ones.
Yeah, and to be honest, guys, I can't really add much to it. Luke Shaw most improved, and also I had him down as the biggest surprise. 100% see where everyone's coming from, with Cavani being the biggest surprise as well, because I think he was voted the worst signing of the summer transfer window before a ball was even kicked. In a couple of
That's a good
polls.
time to do a poll, isn't it?
The Athletic did it. I think it was actually. I'm pretty sure it was by agents. So they did like a secret poll with agents, and it was the agents that voted that he was going to be the worst signing.
Interesting. So I'm delighted he's proved them all wrong. And obviously most disappointing, 100% agree with Bodie with Martial. Just we have obviously a couple of minutes left, but we might just touch on the summer transfer window that's coming up. It's potentially probably the biggest one post Alex Ferguson, certainly the biggest one for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to potentially progress on to another level. Dave, where do you think we need to, if for example, if you could only sign one player in one position, what would you go for?
Oh, that's an awful question.
I thought you were going to say, like, if you could only pick three.
No, do you know what? I'm picking.
This is more out of interest, right? Name three and then.
No, I'm giving you three because that's ridiculous. Listen, centre back, I think for sure needs to be addressed. It's too much of a fucking roulette when Harry Maguire is not there, and even when he is there, it's just like jumbling between him and Lindelof and Bailly, and every time I feel like Tuanzebe's gonna step up and he looks so assured and confident, but he's just not as reliable as Harry. Nobody's as reliable as Harry, but yeah, as a centre back, and then I would be happy with a proper defensive midfielder, an Ndidi, a Kante, someone like that to play in with whether it's Scott, whether it's Fred, whether it's Pogba, it doesn't really matter. Just somebody in there who knows what they're doing. Like while we watched the Champions League final and Kante just put on a masterclass, and there's nothing I wouldn't give to have an N'Golo Kante. The striker thing, I wouldn't mind putting a pin in it, even until January, and going for a right winger instead, and see if those three positions then solve the issue up front, because we know next season Haaland's going to be at a better price, and if we can impress this season, then we might be in with a running to snap him up next season and without breaking the bank. So yeah, those three I think would be where I'd choose.
And right wing, Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, I think it has to be. I think it has to be at this stage.
Yeah, I think any man. No offense to any other Man United fan, but if you pick any other those three positions to strengthen, you're wrong. We need a right winger so badly. We need a proper defensive midfielder so badly, and we need a centre back pretty badly. Like Greenwood never played on the right wing in the youth side, like never. He literally played either up front or just behind the striker, and he's done really well. And he's had his ups and downs of form, and like fair play to him. I think he's really like he's done as well as he could have done coming into the first team and doing what he's done. But we've not had a right winger at the club for so long now, like a proper right winger. And yeah, Sancho is probably like the obvious one in terms of who we've been linked with. If we can't get him or money's an issue, I'd possibly look at maybe Rafinha from Leeds or even Neto from Wolves if we're taking more of a gamble. I would go all out for Declan Rice, defensive mid. I know people hate me saying that on an Irish podcast, but I would go all out for him.
I'm in agreement with you on that one, Shane. I think he was one of the main reasons West Ham did so well this season.
Yeah, of course he was. He captained them to nearly getting Champions League football. He's the right age profile. He's a leader. You can just tell by him. He's a proper leader. he's actually, I think he's underrated how good of a footballer he's improved as in the last 12 months. Like he's been brilliant in terms of on the ball as much as anything. Like that's the side of his game is really improved. And then I don't know who I'd actually go for as a centre back, to be honest. I've thought about it a few times, and I don't know, maybe there's some hidden gem around Europe that they're going to find, but I don't, it's a position I don't actually see. I suppose the role of a centre back has changed so much in recent years, and the type of player they're expected to be, that it's kind of hard to identify who fits in. But if Man United want to play this progressive style and higher line, etc., then it's as important as any of the other signings, really, to allow the rest of the team to play in that way.
And out of those three positions, Shane, realistically, can you see Man United going out, whether it's obviously the recruitment team going out and getting three players, or three of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's targets for those positions? Or are we going to be disappointed come the end of the summer with just the Jadon Sancho?
Yeah, I don't know why. I feel positive going into this summer, which I shouldn't given our recent track record. But the big thing for me is we need to buy three players that are going to walk into the first team. It can't be someone who's fighting with McTominay and Fred to play in the two midfielders. It can't be somebody who's fighting with Lindelof. It can't be somebody who's rotating on the right wing. Like, I think they need to be three players that are ready made to come into the first team and are there on the first 11. And then suddenly our squad, we've got 15, 16 players that you can then trust and then build more younger players around.
Dave,
yeah, I think we will go for them. I don't know why. I think we will this season.
Dave, do you share the same optimism as Shane? And have you got a centre half in mind that you'd like United to sign?
Yeah, I'd have every reason to feel positive. I don't think, especially with the fan unrest, that United would get away with signing one player. That's just not. It's just not. No. I would be very optimistic. I would expect three. If I put my upset and everything aside, I thought Pau Torres was impressive for Villarreal. He looks very competent. He looks like a Ruben Diaz. He's done very well with somebody experienced beside him. So maybe he does well with Harry Maguire. There's not many, in fairness, top centre backs out there. I thought I liked the look of Upamecano at Leipzig, but then I've seen a couple of games where he's just looked all over the place. So that one, I think he's signed up with Bayern, is he? Or signed? Yeah, I think he's got a deal done. But there's not many top centre backs out there, and I not really in the mood for spending 100 million on them either. So, your man at Napoli, I can never remember his name. We've been linked.
Valley.
Yeah, we've been linked to him for ages. But I think Pau Torres will be ready to move on from Villarreal this summer. There seems to be a lot of talk about it. Just touching on Declan Rice, to be honest, I've no real issues with the guy whatsoever. I just think they're going to look for 70, 80 million for him, and I can't. I've talked before about Leicester's recruitment. I mean, indeed, he cost them something like 22 million, and he's been one of their players of the season. I feel like if you do your work, if you do your scouting properly, you don't need to go and spend 80 or 90 million. And it's always on an English player, the price tag gets whacked up again. Going out and spending 30, 40 million, even 50 million on a centre half, then whatever you're going to spend on Jadon Sancho, his numbers aren't going to be as high as it was last season. So I don't know. I'm not against signing Declan Rice, but I don't know. I just don't want to be extorted, and I think the club has backed away from those sort of deals in recent years. Yeah.
If Declan Rice was an Irish international, he'd probably be about 30 million at most, I'd say.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's why he switches allegiances. He just wanted to get the price tag up.
Anyways, lads, we might wrap it up there. I do have
one thing I would just want to say, because I know it could go down a weird path. I am really hoping for something really positive out of Donny van de Beek for next season, because that would really solve an issue of having a proper defensive midfielder, because he's a super competent player. He knows how to pass. He looks down on confidence, but I think he could be a real player, and that could really avoid having to spend 70 or 80 million on a defensive midfielder.
Yeah, and I think watching the Euros in the over the next couple of weeks will be really, really interesting. Keeping an eye on obviously Pau Torres for Spain, and see if Donny gets a couple of games for the Netherlands as well, and a couple of obviously the other United lads playing with England, and potential United players playing with England. But Shane, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us this week for the Manchester United season review. And we'll definitely catch up again over the summer. So thanks again, lads, for joining us.
No problem, lads. All the best.
Cheers.